Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vinolia, and I'm the marketing coordinator for ASCA. I would like to welcome everyone to our 10th live session of RSWS, which is Research Support Webinar Series 2021. Before we continue, I'm going to take you through some housekeeping rules. I'm going to request everyone to please mute their mics before we start. Everyone to mute their mics before we start to avoid any background noise. And also write your comments and questions in our chat box. And if you have any questions, we would request for you to please raise your hand after the presentation, only after the presentation. Today we have our guest speaker. Our guest speaker is Dr. Mike Manga, who is a managing consultant with Norm One Enterprise Solutions, specializing in procurement and supply chain optimization, strategy facilitation, corporate governance, and business ethics. He lectures at the Catholic University of Zimbabwe and serves on several boards of both for-profit and non-for-profit institutions. His experience spans over 30 years of professional supply chain management and corporate leadership gained in service with re-owned organizations encompassing Alono Zimbabwe, Unilever South Africa, Unilever Zimbabwe, TA Holdings, and Blue Ribbon Industries. Without any waste of time, we're going to welcome Dr. Manga to take over. Dr. Manga, you can proceed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Masipa, for that introduction. And colleagues, fellow professionals, it's my honor and pleasure to be with you this afternoon and for us to share some aspects of research techniques and designs as we seek to bring out some research work and develop our discipline. And I really feel honored that you've taken your time to share it with me as we share these aspects. So I'm going to share with you my presentation and we can start right away. The topic I'm discussing today is understanding mixed method research design. So when we talk of mixed method research design, we are essentially talking about the aspects that are being used now, both in academia.
Dr. Manga, can you put your presentation on slide mode, please?
In various professional fields, could be project management, medicine, supply chain itself. And these mixed methods research designs are very much a novel way of doing research. It's still a growing area of research. So in terms of our coverage today, in terms of the presentation layout, we will talk about the overview of mixed method research design itself. We'll talk about the definitions of the various classifications of mixed research design because there are various systems and aspects to it. We will look at the rationale or justification of why one needs to apply mixed research design in research as opposed to just carrying out either a qualitative or quantitative research design. We will look at various key aspects or elements and what it takes.
Sorry for interrupting, sir. Sorry for interrupting. Can you please put your slides on a slide mode? Yes, thank you.
Oh, all right, thank you. Thank you for that. So we will then look at how one goes about conducting mixed method research, and any other views from academics and others, what they feel about the mixed method research design, and what the future holds for mixed methods research design in terms of taking our discipline forward. So mixed method research design, as I did indicate, this is still an emergent methodology, and it's still evolving. And it's really a systematic way of integrating or mixing quantitative and qualitative research data. I think I may have to put off my camera because I'm seeing that it's interrupting with my slide here. If you would excuse me, I can get back to the presentation. Sorry about that. Anyhow, let's see what happens. So as I was saying, it's an emergent methodology of research, and it's the systematic integration or mixing of your quantitative and qualitative data, all within a single investigation or your program of inquiry or sustained research that you'll be undertaking. It has also been defined as a way of a research where a researcher collects and analyzes data, but integrating those findings using both qualitative and quantitative methods. And it's all within the same study. So the merging and incorporation of your qualitative and quantitative data here can either be in one research study, single study that's brought to a conclusion, or in some instances, you may have multi-phase studies that take place over a long period of time, particularly like projects from initiation to completion of that project, and all that can actually be taking place. So the understanding amongst all academics and researchers is the convergence of the fact that mixed method research does entail the merging, connecting, embedding of qualitative and quantitative methods in all stages of your study. And this can be from the time you are phrasing your research questions up to how you are determining your sampling methodologies, to data collection and analysis, and finally, interpretation of that particular data without relying on just one specific research method, but a mixed portfolio of research methods. There are various reasons that have been put forward in terms of why it is important to undertake a mixed methods research study. The first one is about triangulation. Now, there is controversy that remains unresolved where one school of thought says, really, would triangulation in research, where you are utilizing quantitative and qualitative study, be justified as mixed method research design? And others have argued that just undertaking a triangulation or using 2 or 3 different modes of study do not necessarily mean that it is a mixed method until there is that integration of the data itself in terms of how the research is being taken, the process under which it is being taken, how the data from all the different forms of research methods in use are integrated and embedded into each other and analyzed in support of the findings that come up. But the main aspect is that when you use mixed methods, it has the same effect that we seek in normal triangulation. And hence, it is justified that through mixed methods, you also undertaking some triangulation so that you get greater validity in terms of corroborating the findings that you come up with from a quantitative study with the results that you, or findings that you get in a qualitative study. So that then gives you greater validity. The second aspect is that of completeness, that when you combine various approaches, research approaches, you then get better insight on the problem that you are investigating, rather than utilizing one research methodology on its own. Another aspect is that of offsetting weaknesses. The various methodologies or research methods that we can employ, each of those has its own inherent weaknesses. But if we then utilize a mixture of research methods, then we neutralize the limitations of the individual approaches whilst building on their strengths or enhancing their strengths through the corroboration that's happening by employing various methods. The next argument is about answering different research questions. There are some questions that can be put forward in a quantitative instrument, but may not really get the desired response because it may not be that clear to the respondent. And by then bringing in the qualitative aspects into that research instrument, it then does help to assist in making sure that the message is getting across correctly, and it assists also in terms of the responses that are going to come through. So that is an aspect that has been put forward in answering different research questions as justifying use of mixed research method. Again, explanation of findings. One research approach, it could be quantitative or qualitative, will explain data in a particular way, but there may well be unanticipated or unusual findings coming out of the research. And that may then require corroboration and explanation using another different method. So if you undertake your mixed research study, you are then likely to find yourself in a better situation where you can address these issues as they appear. Illustration of data, you might undertake a quantitative study, but you can then use qualitative research to illustrate and explain the findings that have come out of the quantitative research. Bryman argues that, or opines that it's more like putting the meat on the dry bones of quantitative data. You might have findings that are coming through from your quantitative survey. But for you to then elaborate on the explanation, you need a qualitative approach to it. So by working symbiotically with the two systems, you are better able to enhance and explain better the findings of your research. It's also used in hypothesis development and testing, as well as in instrument development and testing, where a qualitative study may generate issues and aspects that can then be incorporated into a quantitative study. So working with both systems helps in that regard. We come to collaboration in interdisciplinary research. logistics, supply chain management can work together to investigate different phenomena within the organization. And different aspects within that supply chain can be investigated using different research methods. It could be qualitative or quantitative, but being done either concurrently or simultaneously, so that the various disciplines, depending on the technicality and techniques that they are using and the skills that they have in that particular area, one group might use quantitative or qualitative studies, but still integrate their data for analysis and interpretation of their results. So that collaboration between interdisciplinary research can actually be facilitated through adoption of mixed method research. Now, I just want to touch on the classifications or some types of mixed method research design. And I'll start off with the major ones, which are commonly used now, and then also talk about the other more technically advanced systems or methods of mixed research design. The first one that I want to touch on is the convergent mixed design. Others term it the convergent parallel mixed design. And here we're talking of merging quantitative and qualitative data so that we can then derive a holistic inquiry to the research question at hand. In this instance, qualitative and quantitative data are collected simultaneously, and then they are incorporated into the analysis and interpretation stages. So you have broad surveys that are being done quantitatively, and you could have focus group and in-depth interviews, which could then be happening from a qualitative aspect, and then these are brought together in terms of analysis and use of these two methods. As we said, that it becomes a triangulation aspect where you are using the two methods as a check, one for the other. And you are trying to combine the best attributes of each of those designs so that you can enhance your validity and reliability of the findings of your study. For example, one could use convergent mixed design when looking at a study, for instance, on personal ideologies, on how they may influence supply chain professionals in terms of introduction and adoption of ethics. Here you are looking at the perceptions within the individual themselves. You are also looking at factors that can actually influence people in terms of their perception of ethics. So you have various forms, various attributes, various elements that you are looking at. So these variables can either be looked at from a quantitative aspect and others from a qualitative aspect, but all happening with your survey, happening quantitatively, being followed by the qualitative in-depth interviews and observations so that you actually get a better understanding of what is happening. Just to illustrate graphically what would be happening in this instance, you have your quantitative research taking place, collection of data. You have qualitative collection of data, and these converge where you are bringing the data together and analyzing how each of those aspects then relate And that will then lead to your interpretation of the findings arising from the two approaches that you have looked at or incorporated or embedded together. I want to touch on the second aspect, and this is the explanatory sequential mixed method. With the explanatory sequential method, the researcher would first execute the quantitative inquiry of the study, analyze those results, and then go on to explain the results in a much more elaborate way or extensive explanation, now utilizing the qualitative data. So it's termed explanatory because you undertake your quantitative research and then you then further elaborate with qualitative data. And it's sequential because you then start off with your quantitative research and you move on to the qualitative stage. So you first collect your quantitative data, priority here is on quantitative, and the next stage will be the qualitative. As an example, one could look at a study where you would want to establish or infer individual resistance to vaccination against COVID-19, for instance. You would then have a survey instrument, which is basically your quantitative research. And having carried out that quantitative research, you then follow through with in-depth interviews where you then can draw firm conclusions utilizing both sets of data. Or if you were to look at assessing people's knowledge and risk perception, say about exposing one's procurement systems to second and third tier suppliers, you will come up with a quantitative survey that you undertake, and you then go on to carry out in-depth interviews to find out what other attributes would influence people in terms of to what extent they can expose their systems and processes to second and third tier suppliers, which qualitative aspect will then help explain some of the findings arising from the earlier quantitative study. So whilst these two systems or methods can be used, one needs to bear in mind that there's always that challenge and lingering question about the unevenness of samples. When you do a quantitative survey, you are likely to work with a larger size sample than you would with a qualitative one, where you are working with focus groups and on also carrying out in-depth surveys. And one then might then pose the question to say, if you are working with mixed methods research design of quantitative and qualitative design as the explanatory sequential mixed method, to what extent then do you generalize those findings? But something that is always lingering in someone's mind, and we need not lose sight of that. The third dimension is the exploratory sequential mixed method. Here, the modus operandi is the same as explanatory sequential mixed method, except that the order is now in an inverse position. Where in the explanatory investigation, we would start with the quantitative study, followed by qualitative. When it comes to the exploratory sequential mixed method, we then commence our investigation with the qualitative phase, and we collect the viewpoints of participants, do the interviews, and then the analysis of the data arising from the qualitative study is then used or utilized to then develop the ensuing quantitative phase that follows. And here, your aim is to explore phenomena, and having done that, use the information from the qualitative exploratory approach to then design a research instrument that one can then address questions to the specific variables that you are looking at in a quantitative format, so that you then can come up with an instrument to collect your data. And again, the same issue of sample size and how generalizability does occur or will take place also remains an issue that we need to bear in mind. Where can we use exploratory sequential mixed methods? If one looks at some studies that have been conducted, one that comes to mind is one by Meru, 2018, who did an exploratory study of Internet of Things adoption intention in logistics and supply chain management. Here, various phenomena were being looked at. What would it take to introduce Internet of Things in logistics and supply chain management? What would be the incentive for supply chain professionals to adopt Internet of Things? What would be their concern? And at the end of the day, what would then determine the actual adoption of Internet of Things? Here you are dealing with various phenomena, and use of one particular research methodology may not be the ideal one. And hence, a mixed method, such as the exploratory method, becomes very pertinent and also very relevant in that kind of study. And a graphic illustration of the exploratory sequential mixed method. As we indicated, you start off with your qualitative data collection and analysis. This then will build to the quantitative data collection and the analysis, and you then do the interpretation of the joint data. There are other advanced versions of mixed methods, and I'll just briefly touch on them here. The first one being the experimental, also termed embedded mixed method of design. This uses qualitative, quantitative data again, but it's nested within a bigger design or experiment. This is used mainly for experimentation. You can also have the multi-phase mixed method design, and these are prevalently used in evaluating projects or in some program interventions. These can be undertaken concurrently or sequentially, depending on the nature of the project. In other words, the quantitative and qualitative methods may actually be sequential or concurrent, taking place at the same time. Other mixed methods designs, such as the transformative, which is mainly used for social studies. It's basically being promoted for social justice issues and other social challenges. And here, data can be arranged simultaneously as well, or it can also be concurrent, and as you build one set of data upon the other. But the first three that we spoke about are the ones that are making some inroads and some beginning to be applied much more at a much more advanced stage within supply chain management and other disciplines as compared to these advanced modes that I've just indicated here. So what are the key elements of mixed method design? What we see is the collection and analysis of qualitative and quantitative data. We also note the combination of both approaches and seeking to offset the weaknesses of any single research approach on its own. We can also see that the research methods, the mixed research methods, is actually a rigorous method of doing some research, but it's something that is critical. We see use of specific method design. You are either using an exploratory design or an explanatory one, and all these issues bring to the fore issues of priority and sequencing. If it is an explanatory, the sequence is that it then has to commence with a qualitative research and then supported by the quantitative. If it is an explanatory one, then as we saw, the arrangement is then reversed. And when one can actually use diagrams and flow diagrams to clearly show how the research is flowing, that can actually bring about some better understanding of the design that one is using and the sequence with which the research procedures are actually progressing. And as for the approach and steps in conducting the mixed method research, despite the fact that it's rigorous, mixed method study can be successfully undertaken if one ensures the following recommended steps, that you determine the feasibility of the mixed method research on the study one is undertaking. And it's about establishing the skill base that yes, the researcher clearly understood and appreciated how to undertake this form of research and what knowledge bases a researcher built around this. Also taking cognizance of the audience for whom the findings of the research how they will look at this and how you need to make an impact with that particular audience. For instance, there is a growing demand for some research consultancies where the audience or the clients seeking work to be done are insistent on adoption of mixed methods for the particular studies that they want to be undertaken. And others will only fund projects that will employ the mixed method research design, because they are bearing in mind the fact that they would want some enhanced validity and reliability of those findings. They are getting more confident that that's what will deliver either incontrovertible results from the research findings. So one has to really determine here, what's the skill base, what's the knowledge that has been built around it, and what does the audience of those findings expect or what they prefer. As a researcher, you have got to identify the rationale as well from the list of various aspects that we looked at, right from the issue of triangulation. What is it that's motivating you to adopt the mixed method research. The third aspect is one must establish the data collection strategy. As you have seen, there needs to be some prioritization of whether you are commencing your research with quantitative study or qualitative, or whether this is concurrent. And this is determined by the method that you are going to choose, whether it's explanatory or exploratory. And one then understand the sequencing of the data collection if it is not happening concurrently. And as you develop your instruments, one must understand that there's need to develop quantitative questions, qualitative questions, and questions that speak to the mixed method research itself. And the collection of data as it happens, one must understand, is it concurrent, is it sequential? And the same goes into the report writing of the findings as well. Is it a single report? Are you doing it in multiple stages, depending on whether the research is multi-stage or is something that is being undertaken on a once-off basis? So these need to be taken into consideration. And if these steps are adopted, it's likely to lead to some successful research being conducted. Mixed methods research was being advocated for and promoted. There are also some critiques that have been put forward that, yes, we have some advantages in using mixed methods, but there are also some shortcomings where it has been put forward by some scholars and researchers that it is very much time consuming. We still need to develop a whole lot more knowledge about it. There is the issue of resources because it is rigorous in terms of how it is actually undertaken. There's also the fact that it's quite daunting because one can be expected to do some concurrent mixed study, and that the juxtaposition of different philosophies into the same study, where you're looking at constructivism from a qualitative aspect, which can be considered subjective research, and a philosophy influenced by positivism in terms of quantitative approaches and its objectivity. And the argument then goes to say, how then can one say that the merging or embedding of data which is derived from different philosophical approaches can actually give us the findings that we need. But from what we have just discussed, we can see that they are actually much more positive and that in favor of the use of mixed research methods, despite some of these misgivings. So in concluding, the mixed research methods designs are still limited in terms of application or adoption in supply chain management, but greater inroads are being made. There is also knowledge development, which has traditionally relied on single method quantitative studies or use of single methods research, such as qualitative studies, but these have not always given us adequate results within the discipline. So there is a significant opportunity for advancing these methods in supply chain management research, in advancing the discipline through application of the rigorous mixed methods research design. Because when you look at our procurement and supply chain discipline, we are dealing with complex and dynamic variables. The phenomena is quite dynamic as well. So this is an area where mixed methods research designs are being promoted, and we do hope that we can continue to share and develop this knowledge and advance our discipline. Thank you very much. We can go into discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the presentation. I would like to ask you if you have any remarks with regard to the presentation or any comment before we take the questions. Dr. Mike?
Hello?
I would like to know if you have any remarks or comments with regard to the presentation before we go to the questions.
And I was just saying that I'm open to going into discussions. This is what I needed to share.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for your very insightful presentation. We're gonna take the questions. The first question is from Moroka, which says, dear Prof, how does one continue if data from both methods give two complete different outcomes?
That's a good question. When I was looking and doing some research on this, the main rationale for undertaking the mixed methods research was such that if you have issues, it's unlikely that both would be conflicting. And the mixed methods research would provide not only for two methods to be adopted. You could have a quantitative study, you can have in-depth studies, you can have focus groups, you can have observations. So if two methods are conflicting, then you might as well introduce a third one or a fourth dimension to it until you then get to an explanation that is sound. So you are not restricted to just two methods. Within the qualitative study itself, you can adopt several approaches as in focus groups or in-depth interviews or observations, and until you get a clear explanation. So if you have conflicting data lends one to do more work.
Thank you for that, Doctor. I don't think we have any more questions. It's just a comment which says, thank you for the insightful presentation, Prof. So if there are no more questions, I would like to believe that we have come to the end of the session. Dr. Mike, would you like to say something, maybe to clarify something before the end of the session?
For me, it's to thank you, Ms. Basipa and the team for this opportunity. Knowledge is all about sharing, yes. And for me, it gives me a great pleasure to be amongst colleagues and fellow professionals, and to thank you and Professor Amber and the team for the wonderful work that you are doing and reaching across the continent. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Before we go to the conclusion, I would like to encourage everyone to please follow our sessions on our social media platforms to get the recordings and also to get more information on the on the upcoming events as well. And also visit our YouTube channels to get all the previous recordings for the RSWS sessions and also for the SCM Game Changer. Our next session is on the 22nd of July, which will be engaging on a topic of negotiating access and research ethics with Prof. Benon Bashega. So before we close, I would like to thank everyone to avail, those who managed to avail themselves for this session. And I believe that it was helpful and also insightful. Okay, for those who are requesting the presentation, I will send after the session. And thank you everyone for your time. And Dr. Mike Manga, I would like to thank you on behalf of everyone. Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome, it was my pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. Prof. Ambe, do you have anything which you'd like to say before we close?
No, not for now. Thank you so much, Dr. Manga. Thank you, colleagues, for coming on board. Have a blessed day ahead. Thank you.
Thanks,
okay,
Prof.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye,
bye all. Thank you.